Hey, this is Heidi Dawson. If you love all things health and wellness and style of any kind, hang out here with me each week. I'm obsessed with never-ending improvement, and it's all in an effort to help each one of us live a wildly successful lifestyle. Subscribe today so you don't miss a thing.
Hi, guys. Welcome to episode 437 of the Wildly Successful Lifestyle Podcast. I'm glad you're here. Nice of you to choose this podcast to listen to today. You got a lot of choices, and I'm super honored that you're here. So thank you. Now, I have been fortunate in my life, or I view it as fortunate, that I've never had the need to go to one of the 12-step programs like AA, where you're working hard to keep yourself clean from substance of sorts. Now, those are helpful to a lot of people, but if I were going to design a program like that, it would be for every person on the planet. And when you came to the meeting, you know how at the beginning where they have to say their name and what they're doing there? Well, I would start my meetings out like this. For every person on the planet, this is what they would say. Hi, my name is Heidi Dawson. I am not my thoughts, I am not my behaviors, and I tell my brain what to do. It does not tell me. That's how I would start it, because eventually, after repeating that enough times, you would get it, I think. And I want to get it. I want it to be so automatic that any thought that comes in that isn't helpful, I correct it. If it's not useful, I correct it. In Friday's podcast, I talked about how sometimes our strong, uncomfortable emotions are useful and they help us. Like my feeling anxiety about a design element that I was considering. It was causing me some anxiety. So I took the extra step to go drive and impose on someone's personal home to be able to see the product in person, which actually confirmed for me that it wasn't right for my project. I needed to pivot, and pivot we are doing. Now, I'm thankful for my inner guidance system that it kept telling me this needs more attention, because I wouldn't have been happy with that final product, and it's too big of a deal. So I listened and pivoted. So sometimes our brain does give us uncomfortable thoughts that are useful, and those we want to listen to and we want to do something with. But what happens when our brain causes us to have these big emotions and thoughts that just are not useful at all? Like when it tells us that we looked fat in the dress we wore yesterday. There's nothing I can do about that. That's not useful at all. My niece and I were joking around, and I said something that was kind of true about her, but also kind of funny. We laughed, and when she got done laughing, she looks at me and she goes, "That was a little more hurtful than it was funny," which made us laugh all over again. But you see, our brain gives us hurtful thoughts all the time that are not useful, and we never correct it. I was listening to Mo Gaudet speak on the Tony Robbins podcast recently. I think that's how you say his name. But he's an engineer and a math genius who was a tech executive before he became an author and a speaker. And during this episode, he was talking about the brain and how we're able to train our brain to encourage and create our happiness. Or we can also train the brain to be just terrified and anxious all the time because the world is so incredibly bad and it's getting worse. That's how we do, right? But it brings tears to my eyes, literally thinking about how much of our misery is self-induced and unnecessary. And also about how little about that we're told. Now, Mo went on to say that the brain behaves just like the muscles that we train at the gym. Like how we train our body dictates how our body's going to look. And how we train our brain dictates how our life is going to look. That's a big deal. So when I go to the gym, I don't just train my upper body, I train my whole body, which makes sense. My husband, Eric, told me about a guy that used to work out at his gym when he was younger, and the guy only trained his upper body. And so his legs and his calves were super scrawny, not muscular, but his upper body was really super muscular. It looked kind of funny, probably not ideal. But you see, how you train your body is how it's going to look. And in order to change the way it looks, you have to be consistent. The same thing goes for your brain. We have to be consistent in training it too. But how do we train our brain? It kind of sounds hard, but it really isn't. In fact, we're training it every day and have been training it since we were born without even knowing it. I mean, if you wake up every morning and you immediately get on the news or social media or some negative website, you're training your brain that the world is going to end really soon and you should be scared and probably start preparing. Versus think about waking up, meditating, grateful journaling, maybe listening to a positive message of some sort. Both of those routines are training your brain. The life outlook is very different, though, for each of them. One will have you looking for what there is to be grateful for, and the other will have you looking for signs of the apocalypse, and there's those signs, right? Our worldview is created by what we allow into our brain in every single case. Growing up, we don't control it a lot, but as an adult, That's part of our work, controlling what we allow in order to live a carefully curated, peaceful, happy life. The brain left to its own devices has a huge negativity bias because it's been being trained that way from a very young age by our parents, by the school system. I mean, if you don't get good grades, you won't do well in life. If you don't please us, you get punished. That goes on and on. But we, as adults, can train it differently. We can train it to the positive. We can train our brain to be happy by noticing and correcting the thoughts we have that make us unhappy. Now, notice I didn't say by eliminating those thoughts, because you're not going to eliminate them ever. You're just going to get really good at correcting them. You're sort of shaking your head at them like a naughty child that you love very much, but is always doing naughty things. You can't eliminate those thoughts, but you can correct them. Every single one of us has the ability to find joy, and it isn't going to be found outside of us, even though we try very hard. That power is all held in our brain. We just have to guide it in the direction towards the positive. In that podcast with Mo, he went on to say that he went through the worst thing he's ever been through, which was the death of his son. Now, his brain did what our brains often do. It was giving him thoughts that were hurtful and causing much more pain for him, to the point to where he finally literally out loud told his brain, I get it. Don't destroy my life anymore. Don't just give me dreadful, misery-inducing thoughts. Either give me something I can do to make this better, or give me a thought I can think about with joy. It was powerful. His brain was literally destroying him by telling him all the things he should have done to save his son, or could have done. But you see, none of that could be done at this point. He can't do anything about that now. So he made the decision to say to his brain, look, this isn't working. From now on, if it's not useful, don't hurt me. It's a really, really powerful episode of the Tony Robbins podcast, and I encourage all of you to go listen to it. Now, I, of course, ordered his books, and we'll be reading them next, because I know the power I used to allow my brain to have. And I also know how it feels to take back that power and realize that I decide what things mean. I get to decide which thoughts are useful and which are only hurtful. If we really think about it, we do know the difference. Like that thought that I'm not good enough, or no one loves me, or the world would be better without me, or I'm letting everyone down, those are simply hurtful. There's no usefulness in those thoughts at all, and they aren't true anyway. Now, sometimes we do have uncomfortable thoughts that are useful, like I should be eating a salad, or going to the gym, or taking better care of myself, or giving that design element another look. Those thoughts may be useful because they're probably true, and something can be done about them, and it might get you to change it. We all have our own version of repetitive thoughts and beliefs. A belief is just a thought you keep thinking. Get really good at listening to and noticing those thoughts, every single one of them. If you listen to someone talk and you realize that nothing they're saying is true, you would stop listening. But we tell ourselves things that are not true all the time, and we just keep on believing them because we never correct the lies we tell ourselves. You talk to yourself all the time anyway. So start correcting those thoughts that aren't useful, just like you would correct that naughty little kid that you adore. You have to correct yourself too. I literally will catch myself with a thought like, oh, you look terrible today. And then I'll laugh and I'll be like, I'll correct myself and say, no, I don't. I look great. I just need to brush my hair. Get over it. I'll say something silly or laugh about it, because it is silly to think about myself that way. I'm really careful about how I talk to myself about myself, because it really matters. Now, we are not our thoughts. We are not our feelings, and we are not our behavior. We have to somehow figure out a way to separate ourselves from our brain so that we understand that it is separate from who we are innately. Our brain is really a gigantic processor of all the garbage we've allowed in for the entire life we've lived. We have a lot of correcting to do. Trust me, once I started noticing and correcting, I have literally been appalled at the way I talk to myself about myself sometimes. I've also corrected the way I think about others too, because we can be hard on other people too. Now, I'm still not perfect on either of those, but I'm getting better every day. And I have meditation and being very careful what I allow in to thank for it. The Bible says guard your heart, but guarding your mind really may be the first step. My challenge to you this week is to realize that you are not your thoughts. Really, really get that. You don't have to keep thinking those horrid thoughts that are not useful at all. If it's a painful thought, but it's useful and gets you to take action, okay. But if it's a painful thought and it's not true and it's not useful, you have to start correcting yourself. You can do what I do. I will literally have a hurtful thought, notice it, and then correct it quickly by saying, that's ridiculous and not true. And then I move on. You wouldn't tolerate someone else lying to you regularly. You'd correct them. Don't tolerate yourself doing it either. If it's not useful, don't hurt yourself anymore. Share this with 3 people who could use a reminder that life is supposed to feel good and that starts and ends in our head. I love you guys. I'll talk to you in a few days.
Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends, because we're just going to keep going bigger and better places together, and I love that about us. Talk to you in a few days.